Shalom. I'm Rabbi Michael Panitz. I'm the Rabbi of Temple Israel of Norfolk, Virginia, and I have the honor to be speaking to you from the pulpit of my congregation. At this time, my lesson is entitled, Good Tears. Good Tears. Fred Rogers, that insightful and compassionate neighbor to a generation of America's children, used to sing, "It's all right to cry. It's all right to cry." An ordained Presbyterian minister, Mr. Rogers certainly knew his Bible. It is not surprising, therefore, that his reassurances to the children of America that they need not be ashamed of their tears are biblically well grounded. Apart from the Christian reference to Jesus weeping, our Jewish scriptures have many instances of healthy, unabashed crying on the part of our founding fathers as well as mothers. Jacob cries in Rachel's presence when they first meet, telling her of the unhappy chain of events that forced him to flee his home. Genesis 29, verse 11. Preparing to flee from the wrath of King Saul into the wilderness, David concludes his clandestine meeting with Jonathan by weeping. Jonathan weeps too, but the Bible makes a point of saying that David wept longer. 1 Samuel 20, verse 41. In the story we are currently reading in synagogues across the world, it is Joseph who does the weeping. Arrayed in his Egyptian robes of state, his true identity is concealed from his brothers. Thinking that he is speaking to an Egyptian minister and not to Joseph, Judah, Joseph's brother Judah, narrates the story of Joseph's disappearance and Jacob's heartbreak. Hearing the contrition in Judah's narrative, and perhaps also focused for the first time on his father's pain, not only his own, Joseph is overcome. The Bible tells us that Joseph cleared the room of Egyptians, burst out weeping, and then revealed his true identity to his brothers. After delivering a fine speech explaining the theological secret of his life-saving mission in Egypt, Joseph throws in another bout of weeping, this time sharing a good cry with his full brother Benjamin, and then with all of his half-brothers. Genesis 45, verses 14 through 15. I had a cathartic crying moment this past week, emboldened by the example of our biblical role models. I'm willing to share it with you. For the past 9 months, I've been studying the Yiddish language using the application Duolingo. Over the past 267 days, I've not missed a single one. At first, it was elementary words that I heard at home, and then more and more vocabulary that I recognized from German and Hebrew cognates. There are a few Russian words, unmistakably Slavic. The most familiar to you are probably Bubby and Zadie for grandma and grandpa. An increasing number of English words are in the language too, such as tselke for cell phone. Every day, I get emotional satisfaction from improving in what I have always thought of as one of the mother tongues of my heritage, along with Hebrew, of course. But I have a second emotion. This one only increases along with my increasing fluency. I feel contrition. I could have learned Yiddish so easily 40 or 50 years ago, when my grandparents of blessed memory would have been overjoyed to speak Yiddish with me. They were all more than simply fluent. They spoke a high register of Yiddish, a literary level of linguistic expression. My maternal grandmother, Gittel Allentuck, translated professionally from Yiddish to English for this book, The Golden Tradition, Jewish Life and Thought in Eastern Europe, a classic anthology of Yiddish sources, edited by the great Jewish historian Lucy Davidovitz. My grandparents raised their daughter, my mother, Esther, in Yiddish. My mother only learned English in first grade of public school in the Bronx. Her Yiddish pattern of thought was revealed when the teacher told Esther to ask her classmate to close the door, and Esther said, "Make to the door," revealing that she was thinking in Yiddish and rendering the expression mach zu, meaning close, hyper-literally. Even so, my mother grew up to become an English teacher and then a professor of English literature at the college level, and the author of a book on the image of the Jew in English literature. For me, then, learning Yiddish is an extended conversation in my head with my parents and my grandparents, especially on my mother's side. Last year, I had the opportunity to research and publish a report on the revival of Yiddish language study in the United States over the past half-century. I entitled my scholarly article, quote, "Fiddler on a New Roof." The final pages of my article were devoted to an analysis of the Yiddish language performance of the classic stage play Fiddler on the Roof. The venerable Volksbühne, the New York-based Yiddish theatrical repertory company, put on the play some half dozen years ago, extended its run 3 times, and eventually moved the play to its off-Broadway location, where it continues to delight sold-out audiences. All this is background to what I experienced last week. I treated myself to a 67th birthday present, a trip to New York City, to take in a performance of Fiddler auf dem Dach. It was more than powerful. It was cathartic. By the song, Schatchinte, Schatchinte, Schatchin mir zu, Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match, I found myself first choking up and then crying unabashedly. I had that experience over and over again, especially at the heart-catching songs. Tate Zieser Gott von Avrom, the Sabbath prayer, or Tag ein, Tag aus, sunrise, sunset, and Huddle's plaintive song, Weit von mein lieber Heim, far from the home I love. Those songs in particular made me keenly aware of the losses of our Jewish people collectively, and my losses personally that define us and that define me. My parents, gone. My uncles and aunts, once a brace of them, gone. My grandparents, gone. Of course, that is not surprising for a man of 67. I myself am now part of the older generation in my family, if not the older generation for this sprightly congregation. But more, the world of my parents and grandparents is gone too. Revolution and civil war and Stalinist oppression in Russia, and then the all-destroying Holocaust put that world beyond the pale of historical reality and into the twilight zone of memory. Fiddler auf dem Dach is not a documentary. It is a nostalgic, romanticized look at that vanished world. In some ways, as the late great actor Theodore Bickel, who portrayed Tevye the dairyman a dozen years ago in an English-language stage revival of Fiddler, as Bickel put it, Fiddler is, quote, Sholem Aleichem light, like Coke light. the Yiddish author's actual Tevye, the dairyman stories, and his novels about Eastern European Jewish life, they are grittier. The pogrom scenes in his original narratives are not toned down or reframed within a nostalgic evocation of the world of our beloved grandparents. The banishment of the Jews from the fictional Anatevka is not lightened by a Chagall-like magical fiddler following the Jews to the New World, or in one case to the land of Israel. Life was brutal for our grandparents. But for all of its lightweight presentation, Fiddler on the Roof succeeds in connecting us to deceased forebears, and at least in suggesting the hard times that they endured. The Yiddish language revival chooses to be more frank in depicting the hardships that were the coarse bread and meager butter of our ancestors' lives. The flying kazatskas of the Russian dancers at the tavern scene, where Tevye and Laser Wolf, the butcher, celebrate an upcoming marriage. Those are not merely acrobatic. The Russian dancers take over the stage menacingly. That menace becomes all too concrete when, during the pogrom scene, the largest Cossack brute rips the banner containing the word Torah, tradition. At that moment, the entire audience gasped. And of course, this sense of the reality of their lives is heightened by the Yiddish language, the mamaloshen of the characters themselves. As I looked around the audience, I could see that everyone was able to follow the dialogue and the action. The super titles were helpful, of course, but not absolutely necessary. The familiarity of the story to those who've seen the stage and movie versions, not to omit the adult and teenage amateur productions, is so great that a knowledge of Fiddler is part of the cultural literacy of American Jews. For me, the encounter with Tevye, Golda, the daughters and their young men, the eccentric townsfolk from the beloved rabbi to the cheeky beggar, and even the dream characters of Fruma Sora and Seitel, was not only a walk down memory's corridors. It was a parting of the curtain between this world of mine and the vanished world I once inhabited, at least partly. I mourned its loss all over again. Hence the tears. But like Jacob, David, and Jonathan, Joseph, and Benjamin, I felt that my tears were cathartic. To mourn that loss as strongly as I did involves a next step psychologically, a renewed sense of commitment to be a link in the chain of generations, binding those ancestors and their world to my own, and through me to my children's. And so I will conclude this meditation with the following prayer. Gott von Avraham und Sora, God of Abraham and Sarah, Elohei Avraham v'Sarah, be with us today as you were with them yesterday, and help us to be with you amidst all the confusion of today, and guide our steps so that our children will be with you tomorrow, as you will surely be with them. Amen.